Hi, everybody. I'm Jeannie Walters, CEO and founder of Experience Investigators. And today I want to talk to you about how to use journey maps in a strategic way to plan for the future, even when it's as unpredictable as it is right now. Now, we bring you videos like this and resources because we want you to succeed as a customer experience leader. You can sign up for all of the resources that we have available at yearofcx.com. And by signing up there, you'll see that we have tools on journey mapping, on service blueprinting, on creating your customer experience mission statement. All sorts of things are available for you that way. You can also find journey mapping resources directly, including our interactive journey mapping template and our journey mapping guide to help you as you embark on your own journey mapping in your organization. So, for today, we're going to talk about something that we've actually talked about before. We originally wrote this article and delivered a video very similar to this back in 2020 when we were all kind of grappling with what was happening in the spring. Now we are well into 2021, and yet it feels like we still have an uncertain future. We're dealing with different types of problems, of different types of challenges around labor shortages and supply chain disruption and the vaccine or not debate. So when we look ahead, we think that journey mapping can help you think through all of those different what if scenarios. So today we'll be going through the same steps as last time, but giving you that context around it too, as we embark on this next chapter that we are all going through. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeannie Walters, and I'm the CEO of Experience Investigators. Our mission is to create fewer ruined days for customers. We do that by helping leaders like you think through strategically about customer experience management. We consult, we coach, we help leaders in all sorts of ways around workshops and spreading the word within their organization. You can reach out to me here on YouTube as well as LinkedIn and through our website as well. So let's get started and talk about today. Now, when we talk about journey maps, sometimes people really look at these as a deliverable, something you hang on the wall, something you share in your organization. That can be really valuable, but I like to think of journey mapping as a verb. It's something that we really take on as a process in order to learn and understand about our customers, their struggles, their challenges, and the opportunities we have to make their experience a little more effortless, a little more delightful, and easier on the inside of our organizations as well. So when we think about journey mapping as a technique, you can see why this could be more important than it's ever been. We need to really work on understanding our customers and the journeys that they're on today and tomorrow. Now, I also like to think about how we can use this for strategic planning in times of change. That's because when we know that change is coming up, we can think through the various scenarios and apply journey mapping techniques to those to help us predict and plan for some of the things that might happen. Because as we look ahead, we are yet again looking at a different chapter. We are looking at that next normal. I encourage you to think through some of the challenges that maybe you're not dealing with yet, but might happen for you. Supply chain disruptions and labor shortages are happening. Let's be realistic about that. Let's think through, what does that mean for our customers? What does that mean for their journey? And what can we do about it? Sometimes that's simple, like proactive communication. Sometimes it's more complicated, and we have to change things within our organizational structure or the processes and systems that we use. But I say this not to scare you, but to empower you. When we are talking about change, it is very easy to think that, well, we should just throw up our hands and think that's how it goes. We can't predict, so we better just move on. But by using journey mapping as a tool this way, we can really start to plan for the future in the best possible ways that we can. It can be very empowering. It can help everybody feel more engaged in the outcomes. And frankly, it shows your customers that you're caring about them, that you're thinking ahead for them, that you're communicating about this in a way that's visible and transparent for them as well. So as we move through this, I really want you to think about journey mapping as a strategic planning tool. So these are some of the steps, and there seem like a lot of them, but I promise this is something you can do. Now, first of all, we want to know our goals. Easier said than done sometimes. We'll talk about that. You want to know what you're mapping, you want to know your customer. You also want to evolve your approach. What we may have used in the past might not work at this moment in time. We have to evolve with the marketplace, with our customers, and frankly, with the world at large. Now, workshop virtually. This is something that I got asked a lot about in 2020 and 2021. How can we do a journey map if our people are still remote? We'll talk about that. We want to involve customers. Ironically, this is often left off of a lot of journey mapping efforts. And I really encourage you, now is the time to reach out to really understand and hear from our customers. There are a variety of ways to do this, but the most important thing is that you know that your customers are involved in this process. And then finally, we want to synthesize the information and insights. Sometimes it's a lot, and we need to think about what are our priorities, who needs to know what, and how can we share this in a way that will drive action? Because that's what this is all about. It's not just documentation, it's not just understanding, it's to drive action and effort in your organization to move your customer experience strategy forward, to serve your customers, and ultimately to serve your business goals as well. We want to produce a journey map template that works for your organization. When we start on this effort, sometimes we realize there is a lot of attention to those working on this. Empower your people to use this as a technique and best practice. Again, it's the process that's powerful. It's not just about the deliverable. And finally, we want to share and prioritize and ultimately take action. Now, as we walk through this, I really encourage you to think about your organization, your structure, and your role here. If you have maybe a title that doesn't include customer experience, if you're exploring this because you're one of those customer experience change agents who are really thinking about the customer, but maybe it's not part of your title, maybe you don't feel empowered to really take on something like this, I encourage you to think about the ways you can take it on. Small changes have big results. So feel empowered to do something with journey mapping moving forward. Now, the first things first, you need to know your goals. When we talk about journey mapping, it's very easy to turn it into an outcome unto itself, meaning that sometimes people will say, well, we need a journey map. I've heard it's a really good idea. I want to understand my customers. Great. We need to get a little more specific. Why are we doing this? What are the goals that we want to achieve? Sometimes it's helpful to narrow down those goals and scope with your journey map because if you go too big, it can take too long to get to action. The world we're living in today is moving very, very quickly. And if we're using this as that strategic planning tool, that means we want to look ahead and take action now so that we can serve our customers better into the future. So, knowing that, when you think about your goal, get specific. What are you trying to do for the customer? How will that drive your business? And sometimes that could be a what if scenario. We are trying to determine what we can do with our customer journey if our supply chain is disrupted. That's a great goal. Figuring out the what ifs can be a goal unto themselves, but make sure you define that before you jump in. The other thing you want to do is know what you're mapping. This is really about scope. What are you actually creating as the start and end to your journey? It's very tempting to say we want to map everything for every customer and the entire journey. But if you can narrow that scope and say, you know what, we really need to think about what is onboarding like during these times. You know, we apply these same principles to employee journey mapping as well. And you can think about what was it like for onboarding as a remote worker who never met your colleagues in person. Mapping that out, thinking about that context and narrowing that scope can really help you understand what's most important and where to put the efforts and where to drive the action, because that's what, again, this is all about. We also, of course, want to know your customer. You have to know who are you mapping for. So I always recommend starting with one persona. Now, I know many of you have complex businesses. B2B always says to me, but we've got all these different customers. Yes, you do. Start with one. If you are looking at those what if scenarios, think about which customer would be most affected. Sometimes in a business to business relationship, you might want to think more about the buyer in certain cases or the end user in certain cases. So really think through and prioritize, who are we mapping for? Getting specific will help you come out with a better map, with better outcomes, and most importantly, with better, more specific actions to take. Now, typically, once you do this for one customer for one journey, many of the things that you will want to change or improve, they can be applied throughout your customer journey to many other customers. So it's not wasted effort to start with one. It's actually more about layers. Once you start with one and make those changes, then you can map for another persona and see what other changes they specifically need. So if you need to make a case here, be sure that you talk about that idea that even though we're only doing this for one persona, most customers will benefit from the changes that we're making. We also want to evolve our approach. So when you're looking at the approach of journey mapping, I encourage you to think about how to gather up the right data that you have and apply that data to your journey map. Now, I have heard lots of responses about data because sometimes organizations come to me and they say, we have no data at all. We don't know our customers. Others come back and say, well, we have too much data. We don't even know where to start. We can get anything we want and we still don't understand these people. Journey mapping is an opportunity to step back and really look at, what is your customer actually going through? What is their experience like? What are those emotional sides of that experience? And how can we reduce the pain points and improve those moments of delight? So, when you're looking at gathering data, there are three categories I like to consider. The first one is customer feedback and emotional data. So, this is where you might have customer surveys, you might have social media, you might have different ways that customers share feedback with you. That's where you want to include this information. The emotional data is just as important here. So, if you're finding that people are leaving really long comments in their surveys and they're telling you exactly what's wrong and you can feel their frustration, you want to include that in your journey maps to paint a more robust picture of your customers and their real lives. Your customers are not robots. They, even in B2B, they are real people. So we need to remember that these real people have real lives and real emotions. That should be part of your journey mapping. The other thing we want to look at are customer behaviors and actions. You can sometimes get this data. This is more operational data. So, what are customers doing? How high is your renewal rate? How high is your customer churn rate? What are customers doing when they get to your website and they bounce around? All of that information can help inform your journey map as well, and maybe even help you narrow down that scope. So, if you're struggling with scope, look at the data, look at what it's already telling you, and see if there are places you want to dive deeper, you want to investigate what's really going on with your customers. And then the third category of data here is our systems, procedures, and touch points. And so this is looking at really what's happening at each step along the way. Where are those places where customers might be getting, navigating through your mobile app, navigating through your website, things like that. When you want to look at those specific touch points and how does that affect the systems and procedures that you have within your organization, you want to incorporate all that data into your journey mapping efforts. Now, we get asked a lot about workshopping because in traditional times, I'm not sure what to even call it anymore, but in the times before the pandemic, it was very typical for us to come into an organization, we get everybody in a room, we use lots of post-it notes, we have a great time, and we figure out a journey map together that way. It's very collaborative, it gets people in the right headspace, and it's a great way to get started, to kickstart a journey mapping effort. Now, with virtual life that many of us are still involved with, you might have people out there who are still remote. Maybe you've gone totally remote during the pandemic. That's happening to a lot of organizations. There are different tools you can use, there are different ways you can do this. We use different tools when we are workshopping virtually, but now with breakout rooms and with whiteboards and with all those things you can do virtually, I promise that this can be successful for you. We've done many, many of these during this time, and every single one has ended up with a successful journey map. So make sure that when you're thinking about this, that you're really planning for success. Because the one thing I will say is that when you get people in a room, sometimes that's enough. And you can say, this is what we're doing today. And you guide them through the process. When you're getting people into a room virtually, it takes a little more planning and communication. You want to make sure everybody's engaged and understands the rules of the engagement. You want people with their cameras on. You want people, making sure that they're participating and it's interactive. You want to explain the tools that you're using. So just think a little further ahead for these virtual workshops, because that will help you set better expectations for the event and become more successful with it. And then we also, of course, want to involve customers. Anytime we are conducting journey mapping efforts or trying to understand our customers better, we want to make sure that we're hearing directly from them. Now, some of that is with the feedback data that you have, it's with the CX metrics like customer satisfaction rate and net promoter score, things like that. But you also really want to incorporate the voice of the customer in the truest form. I have seen very few other things that can move mountains more than hearing directly from the customer. When we share with our leaders that we are, hearing real words, real emotions from our customers, they understand that this is more than a number. This is more than a dashboard. And so I would say there are a couple ways to do this. Now, virtually, you can certainly reach out, have some customer interviews. You can have different smaller group. Now, I don't like the word focus group, but validation groups where you literally talk to them about their journey, seeing if what you've predicted for their journey is what they tell you back. You can also do this by listening, by recording certain or listening to recordings from your contact center, sharing tidbits with that, including quotes directly from the customer. Any way that we can involve the customer directly is really, really important. So don't skip that step. We also want to synthesize the information and insights. That means we need to figure out of everything that we've collected, the objective data, the internal insights, the customer feedback, the commentary, all of those things, we need to figure out what is the story that is most important to tell. Because if we dump everything in the kitchen sink in a journey map, it can feel a little overwhelming, and maybe somebody will zero in on something that isn't as important as something else. So we need to think about what is the story that we want to tell. If we have found that our customers are frustrated at key points in the journey, and that's where we think we really need to prioritize in order to improve their journey based on our customer experience mission and our goals for success, then that's what we want to tell. Now, I'm not saying to throw out the rest of the data or anything else that you collected in that journey map. You want to collect that and make sure there's a way to prioritize that for later. But if you are telling the story and sharing this with leadership, with different groups in order to move things forward, it's up to us to really tell the right story. So make sure when you're looking at everything that you've collected, you're telling the right story moving forward. And of course, doing this will inspire other leaders in your organization, which is such a wonderful outcome because we want them to feel empowered. We want them to think about journey mapping as a technique, as a tool, as a verb. And so, one of the best ways you can do this is to create a journey map template that everybody in your organization uses. And the reason that can be so powerful is if you have teams working on different journey maps, you can start putting them together and centralizing that journey so that everybody in your organization has visibility into that, can start seeing, oh, this is what happens after our department is done. They go over here, and now I understand the rest of their journey. You can make it incredibly simple. We have an interactive journey mapping template on our site that's available to you. That's pretty simple. You can also make it very complex. There are different software programs out there that really include a lot of real-time data and different things like that. So you have lots of options here, but I encourage you to think about What is a universal way we can do this throughout our organization? And then the other thing to stress here is you want people to all understand what journey mapping is in the same way. Because sometimes what happens in organizations is we call it a journey map, but it's actually a process map. And a process map is internally focused. A journey map is all about the customer. We are using the customer's voice. Everything is from the customer's perspective. I always encourage people to think about writing I statements from the customer's perspective. So that means instead of saying we sent a mailing, the journey map says I received a mailing because it's the voice of the customer. So make sure everybody has a way to understand what journey mapping is. That can be a training, that could be a video you make, that could be a guide, just like we have on our site, so that you get everybody to understand what it is as they use that template. You'll be able to build a really robust journey map that way. And the best part, again, is that it's a technique. So people will take action to improve the journey along the way. Now, this is not just about us. This is always a team sport. Customer experience is a team sport. We can identify a lot of the ways that we need to improve things for the customer. But guess what? We need other people in order to make those changes. So when we are looking at prioritization, it's great to get a cross-functional team together to share this throughout your organization and to start asking questions like what needs to be addressed first? Who owns it? How will they do it? What will they do? How will we hold everybody accountable? Now, we have some resources on our site for you to think about how to even run and structure a cross functional CX team meeting. We put some time into that because we found that one of the challenges that leaders have is that they struggle with priorities. And the reason they struggle is because it has to be everybody's priority in order to move things forward. So I encourage you to think about how can you use the journey map and the information and insights you get to really help drive the right priorities and get cross-functional support to do so. This is all about taking action. This is all about making sure that we are putting in the right efforts so that our customers have better experiences. And when we're thinking about using this as a strategic planning tool, when we're thinking about answering those what if questions, I really encourage you to take a step back and think about what are the most important actions that we can take. Because sometimes we get a little blue sky about this stuff and we need to come down to earth and be realistic. That includes things like, okay, if we have a labor shortage and we know that's not going to go away for 6 months, let's be realistic about that. Let's think about it in those terms instead of saying, oh, I know, we just hire more people. So, whatever challenges you think your organization and your industry might have moving forward, really use this as a tool to think through what are those scenarios that maybe we don't like thinking about. But if we think about them now, we can take action and serve our customers better into the future. And better yet, if you tell your customers you're working on this, if you tell them that you are making changes on their behalf, they are going to see that you are putting in that effort and caring on their behalf as well. Now, some of this came out during the pandemic where certain airlines or hospitality brands realized that people were having anxiety about losing their miles because nobody was allowed to fly. They proactively sent out communication and said, hey, guess what? We've extended the deadline. We've extended the fact that you can keep your miles for a lot longer than originally planned. That's a good example of thinking through those what if scenarios, as well as thinking through what are our customers really dealing with in this moment in time. That's what journey mapping can help you do. So these are the steps. Know your goals, know what you're mapping, know your customer, evolve your approach, workshop virtually, involve your customers, synthesize the information and insights, produce a journey map template that works for your organization, share and prioritize, and of course, take action. That's what this is all about. So when we think about a customer experience strategy, which I hope you're always thinking about, we need to make sure that we are taking things into a way that is both based in reality and looking to the future. And that's what I believe journey mapping can do. It can be very much based in reality of today, but it can help us answer those what if questions about tomorrow. It can help us address some of those deep challenges that we have in today's world that is ever changing and ever unpredictable. Now, when you think about how you will leverage this in your organization, I hope you'll tell me. I hope you will share your results. We are finishing up the year of CX in 2022, but I would love to hear about how this and other resources has served you. So use the hashtag year of CX and let us know on social media. Again, I'm Jeannie Walters. I'm so thrilled that you took the time to be here with me today. The mission of my company is to create fewer ruined days for customers. And by being here with me today, you are helping me live that mission. We have lots of resources for you here on YouTube. You can check out more than 75 videos now that are available to you, all about customer experience. Subscribe here, and I hope to see you soon.